to a great degree, the civilian world does not understand nor want to understand the military world. See, in my belief, the military exists for one thing only, and that is to neutralize threats. And that's a sanitary way of saying, if you mess with us, we will kill you. Okay? We'll do all kinds of things up to that point to try to negotiate and to talk, but we have a population that we're going to keep safe, regardless of how off base that they can get at times. We'll let the laws take care of that. But you mess with us, and we will hunt you down, and we will kill you. That terror keeps us safe. And a lot of civilians don't acknowledge, they kind of talk about it. But they talk about it in a sanitary kind of a way. You know, they know it's out there. But when it comes to sitting down and talking to the people who have been trained to eliminate the enemy, it gets kind of uncomfortable. And it gets uncomfortable for those people who have been trained to do that, to talk to the providers. Any of the rights that the military provides can and probably will be abused by the civilian world. Freedom of speech, religion, elected officials. When we have elected officials that will stand up and badmouth the military, when the military has provided them their lifestyle, that's kind of troubling to those of us who served. When the ship came back from the Vietnam, when we pulled into the port, there were more demonstrators on the pier than there were defendants. And we were told over the 1MC, the announcement system aboard ship, that if we engaged the civilian population, we would go to captain's mast. There would be no question about that. So when we came back thinking, you know, that we had gone, served our country, the people that wanted to spit on us and yell at us and call us names and things like that, we were allowed to ignore. And that was the order. And we did. Months or years are used to indoctrinate military personnel. We've got boot camp, advanced infantry training. In the Navy, we've got A schools and B schools. In the Air Force, we've got schools. In the Marine, we've got all kinds of schools that to a huge degree is about indoctrination. Okay, to learn how to be a member of that organization. It's really fun. One of the NARM board members was Army. And so he and I go back and forth about, you know, he was Army and I was Navy. Even though I had 4 years in the Army, we put that aside so that we can banter. And because that's the kind of camaraderie that we build in the military. We want people to be part of that organization. We want them to identify with that organization. We're going to take months or years to develop that camaraderie, that kinship. When they talk about the difference between active duty and reserve component in one of the presentations, one of the problems that you have there is exactly that. All of that group is indoctrinated into that community. And if you go to where we live in Northeast Oregon, it is not a military town. For years and years and years, the National Guard was the weekend warriors. You know, in the 60s, they would take beer to drill. I mean, it was a joke. People would go in the National Guard and got out because there wasn't much going on. It evolved into a very military organization in an area that's non-military. So when people are getting ready to deploy or coming back from deployment, the civilian population does not know what's going on. And a lot of that comes from, as they're being indoctrinated, they're drawn away from the civilian community because the belief system in the military is different than the belief system of the civilian world. Lack of an understanding of the military culture by providers hampers the recovery of the emotional problems of veterans. Okay, I work with people all the time who, again, went to a short workshop on the stress that families go through when they deploy, and then they come back as an expert on the military. Okay, and I've got an individual that I work with that told me, he said, I knew about the military before I ever went to work here. He said, I'd never been in the military, never had a family member in the military. But when I got out of high school, one of my friends had been in the Navy, and the other didn't make it through the Army, but we were really good friends, and they told me what boot camp was like. So I know about the military. You don't have a clue. but he didn't know, he didn't have a clue, and really didn't want to learn. I think this is an incredibly important part. Not all veterans were emotionally stable when they went into the military. If you look at the expression of mental illness, 18 to 28 is kind of a window of opportunity for all kinds of things to express themselves. Most people are in the military by the time they're 19 or 20. Okay? So a number of those things are not going to manifest until they're in the military. Now we also know through study of mental health that people are going to manifest symptoms based on stressors. The military is stressful. When you're in a situation where people die training, I mean that's kind of an idea that it can be dangerous. And not everybody that goes in is stable. Trauma can occur that's not related to combat experiences. I know a whole lot of people that I'm dealing with right now, they're not service connected for PTSD because they did not get PTSD while they were service connected. They weren't in combat. What they were was, one guy was, he was part of the MPs, he would go out and clean up the wrecks on the Audubon. Okay, so he was exposed to more gore than an awful lot of people who had been deployed. Okay, and while I talked to him about PTSD, he's not service connected, so he doesn't have the same level of care. My belief is, and this is where I start to really break with a lot in the mental health community, they'll nod their agreement and talk about, yes, I think this is true, and then go back to doing whatever they're doing. So hopefully this kind of assaults some people's belief systems. PTSD is an emotional disorder. It's not a physical thing. You know, you can read books that says when you have PTSD, the structure of your brain changes. Go through a divorce, the structure of your brain changes. You know, be a drunk, the structure of your brain changes. Have a horrible car wreck, the structure of your brain changes. Okay? That's not news. It is a place to hide and not give good care. It's just not meaningful. Because it's an emotional disorder, it's susceptible to treatment and recovery. There's a book that I use a lot, and I've really gone to it because I think it encompasses a great deal of what I talk about. And the book is Who Switched Off My Brain by Caroline Leaf. And her thesis is that anything that goes on in the brain for more than about 2 to 3 months, your body sees as normal and then will seek to maintain it. And she's got a lot of research. She's gone through Daniel Ammon's research, a bunch of others that have talked about, you know, the change your brain, change your life concept. And what she talks about is that if you stay with negative emotions, you're staying in the limbic system. Okay, the fight-flight portion of the brain. That's a very, very bad thing for you physically. Her goal is to shift things into the frontal lobes, into a thinking, reasoning, rational approach. Okay, it's very prescriptive, it's very down the line. People get over a lot of the PTSD symptoms, or they get to deal with them, as much as you deal with anything. How much, when we talk about depression, if you're dealing with somebody with depression, you have the anticipation that they're going to get better. Yeah. Okay. Well, depression is a symptom of PTSD. If you got somebody with anxiety, do you expect them to get better? Well, yeah. It's a symptom of PTSD. PTSD, in my opinion, is a name for a syndrome. It's not, it's like schizophrenia. If you want to talk about schizophrenia, tell me what symptoms all schizophrenics have. Well, it changes. It varies from one to the other. Okay. PTSD is really difficult to diagnose, and so I think in a lot of cases we overdiagnose it or underdiagnose it based on bias.